Hello and welcome to GAPNA Chat, an official podcast of the Gerontological Advanced Practice Nurses Association. GAPNA Chat provides interviews and discussions with GAPNA leaders and members of the gerontological healthcare community and focuses on advocacy, policy, education, professional development, research, and clinical care for older adults. In this episode, Dr. Cassandra Vonnes, a gerontological nurse practitioner and member of the GAPNA Communication Team, talks with Dr. Brette Svensson, the Post-Acute Services Medical Director at Wellstar Health System in Marietta, Georgia. A rising star within GAPNA, Dr. Svensson currently serves as chair of the GAPNA Communications and Awards Committees at the national level, as well as the GAPNA Georgia Chapter Conference Planning Committee at the local level. Dr. Svensson discusses her inspiration to become a gerontological nurse, her experience as one of the first fellows of the GAPNA Leadership Institute, her mentors, and her efforts in spearheading GAPNA's social media accounts on the GAPNA Communications Committee. We are pleased to present Dr. Vonnes' interview with Dr. Svensson.
This is Dr. Cassandra Vonnes here with GAPNA Chat. We are going to be talking today to Dr. Brette Svensson, who is an adult gerontology nurse practitioner in Marietta, Georgia. She works in post-acute and long-term care and is the Post-Acute Service Medical Director for Wellstar Medical Group. Brette manages acute and chronic illnesses of adults and older adults in a skilled nursing facility where she also precepts nurse practitioner students and provides geriatric education for medical residents. She received her BSN and MSN from Emory, and she completed her doctorate of nursing practice at Georgia State. Brette has been active with GAPNA on a national and local state chapter level for the last 10 years. She has served as the Georgia chapter president and is currently the chair of the Georgia Chapter Conference Planning Committee. She's also the current chair of the Communications and Awards Committees for the National GAPNA organization. Brette recently completed the GAPNA Leadership Institute in its inaugural year and is very excited to be serving as a mentor for this year's Leadership Institute class. It's so nice to have you, Brette, and thank you for taking time for this chat today.
Thank you. I am very happy to be here.
So I was reading that you have an undergraduate degree from Clemson University in biology.
Yes.
Remembering your 20-year-old self, it's not that long ago for you, as opposed to me. Why geriatrics from biology?
Sure. I came to nursing kind of a roundabout way. My 17, 18-year-old self did not really know what she wanted to do for a career. She wasn't sure what she was interested in. And a lot of people around me were going to go to school for biology. I knew that I kind of liked working with people. I kind of liked the healthcare sector, but I also liked science. So I picked this big generic science degree. And then I, got to college and everybody around me was either going to go to medical school or do this traditional scientific track. And I was looking into the medical school thing, and honestly, the path of becoming a medical doctor was never very attractive to me. It just never really hit home. It never hit the right chord. So I said, oh, well, I must be made out for science research then. I was very fortunate to work in a science lab, a parasitology lab, actually. And that professor, Dr. Kim Paul, I believe still runs that lab at Clemson. And she taught me a lot of what I actually still use today. She probably won't listen to this podcast, but I'm going to give her a shout out anyway. So I was fortunate to work in her lab and I had a wonderful time, but it did show me that I just wasn't really a lab person. Sometimes I was in the lab and there was nobody around and I needed to run my experiment. And I thought, this is really cool. And I've learned a lot. I said, but I do think I need to be around people. So a family friend said, oh, you should look into nursing. And I was like, nah. And then she said, no, you should really look into nursing. And so I found out that there were these programs back home in Georgia at places like Medical College of Georgia and Emory University, where people who were getting degrees in something else who realized they're interested in nursing could come back and get a degree in nursing. It's kind of hard to start over when you're already, 3/4 of the way through your 4-year biology degree, not having all the prerequisites. So these programs were specifically made for people like me. The more I looked into it and the more I looked into advanced practice nursing, the cooler I thought it was. And I thought, why didn't I look at this before? And it really hit the chord. I said, wow, this seems like something really cool. I think I'd really like to do it. My parents were very supportive. So I applied to the Emory University BSN to MSN bridge program, basically, got accepted, started that. And then to summarize even more, made it to close to the end of the master's portion. And back then, adult and gerontology were still separate, and they were thinking about combining it that year. So my cohort had the option of taking the combined exam of adult and gerontology when we graduated. And so a lot of folks in my cohort opted to stick with adult only. And I think about 8 of us, Carolyn Clevenger was leading us at the time, and about 8 of us opted to add on a geriatric semester. And that's when I did a rotation with, then it was Evercare, now it's Optum, nurse practitioner. And I fell in love with the nursing home, and I fell in love with older adults. And if I had not added on that semester at the behest of Carolyn Clevenger's advice, I would not have discovered that. And so I was so glad I did it. And then I came out and very, very lucky to have my first job in the nursing home in geriatrics. And here I am today. So it was kind of roundabout, but I found it. And again, I think it was just very fortunate, the right timing, that I happened to add on that geriatric focused semester and really got to know the nursing home. And really, the preceptor made all the difference too. It was just such a good experience. And I really love working with older adults living with dementia. I'm really passionate about kind of the palliative care and the end of life care we do in the nursing home as well. So pretty happy I found my niche.
We are so fortunate that you took a right turn into nursing. Very, very glad. And the timing sounds like it was perfect also. So you were one of the first leadership fellows for GAPNA. What led you to participate in that? Then maybe you could share a little bit about your project with us.
Sure. So I know I've already mentioned Carolyn Clevenger. She still is a very wonderful mentor to me, taught me in school, but other leaders in GAPNA like Catherine Evans and just other folks have always encouraged me, and they kind of took me under their wing as a student. And so when the Leadership Institute came out, Carolyn Clevenger actually reached out to me and she said, you should really do this. And I was like, oh, are you sure? And she said, yes, you should really do it. There are many people in GAPNA, both locally and nationally, who have come to me and said, hey, you should really do this, which is very encouraging because you don't always think of yourself as someone to say like, hey, I should do that. Sometimes you kind of need that push. So Carolyn really pushed me to do it. And obviously glad I did. It was a lot of fun. I learned a lot. Her curriculum for the Leadership Institute year is really fantastic. And so my project kind of came to me, which was kind of, I guess, a very lucky situation because at the time we were really looking at kind of the GAPNA website or GAPNA social media and just kind of looking at how we can affect the engagement. And so I got put in touch with Celeste Tyrell, who's our director of online learning with AJJ, and really got to kind of learn about how she runs social media, kind of the protocol she follows. And then we kind of spent the year brainstorming and thinking about things we could try on social media platforms to see how it affects engagement. There was no necessarily end goal. I mean, we would have loved to see, more engagement across all age groups, but specifically we were looking to see, how do we engage new graduates, for example? Who are we currently engaging? And if we try this type of post or this type of subject, what kind of engagement does it get? So we kind of played around. We had ideas. We started some things just to kind of see what would happen, see what kind of posts would get a lot of hits or likes or, whatever you want to call it. And as you're aware, Sandy, that eventually led into GAPNA now having an Instagram account, which is really, really exciting, and just kind of keeping the ball rolling. I mean, I think there's so many options for what we can do there, but it was really neat to learn about kind of what we already do and what we already have, and just be provided that opportunity to kind of explore those outlets.
And we have a very diverse group demographically, from much older, mature GAPNA members that may be using a lot more Facebook and members that may be more in tune to Twitter or Instagram, like you said. So it sounds like a wonderful project. Your mentor was Dr. Deborah Dunn.
Yes.
What was the mentee relationship like with such a renowned leader in the geriatric nursing community as Dr. Dunn.
Yes, Dr. Dunn is a solid rock. She is amazing and knowledgeable, patient, wise. She's very steady. She's the kind of person who, when she talks about things, it makes you excited. And if she has an idea, you want to jump on board. If she asks you to do something, you really want to do it. It was a lot of fun working with her. She was a wonderful listener and encourager, but she was also very good at kind of helping me steer things in a different direction if we needed to. But she wasn't rigid either. This all kind of happened right before the pandemic year, too. I guess we're still in the pandemic. But I mean, everything that she has kind of helped guide me through over the last couple years plus, she has been very flexible and just really kind of helped me pivot things if I needed to do that. It was just great. I mean, and it's something where I think, people, sometimes look at people in these official positions and they think maybe it's unattainable or something like that. But the relationship that I have with Dr. Dunn and the relationships that I have with other leaders of GAPNA, it's really wonderful because it just shows you, we're all people. We all just love what we do. And there's no like fancy formula to being that type of leader. And it's very encouraging. And they're very down to earth too, especially Dr. Dunn. She's very down to earth. And honestly, I mean, if she lived closer, I would probably be at her house all the time.
And I've had a couple of GAPNA chats with the leadership, and you're really right about Dr. Dunn. You've adopted a lot of her personality traits, influencing people to get involved in your passion, especially on the communication committee. You can reel us right in, that's for sure.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, it's a work in progress. It's a steep learning curve, and I'm always learning.
So I have a social media question for you.
Mm-hmm.
You've immersed yourself in this. And as an expert, I want to ask you a question. When we're reading things online, how do you determine whether it was created by a bot or an actual human created the article? How can you discern that?
Sure. So bots nowadays can be very hard to distinguish from actual humans. And I'll give a little bit of background on bots. I am by no means a super expert, but I do know a little more than I did before. So for anyone listening who is not as familiar with the term bot, a bot is basically a computer program or a software program or some type of computer algorithm that is written to pretty much look like and do things a real user would do. A user being me, you, any other actual human. And these bots, these algorithms can be programmed to do anything that programmer wants it to do. So it can be programmed to post comments, or it could be programmed to, maybe even like post an article. Like you can put whatever you want. So these bots, these programs, what they do is that they're programmed to recognize keywords. So something like COVID or vaccines, Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal, whatever. And when that program recognizes that keyword, it automatically posts some type of inflammatory comment, as you will. So as a silly example, maybe there's an article, you mentioned I went to Clemson. Maybe there's some article that says the Clemson University Tiger Band is marching on Saturday at 9 a.m. Well, maybe someone has programmed a bot to recognize the word tiger. And so it automatically posts a comment that says, cats are the worst animal ever, and they're stinky, and they should be wiped off the face of the earth, right? And the whole purpose of these programs, of these comments from these bots, is to cause dissension. It's to rile people up and get you to kind of argue and pay attention to that, and basically just cause a lot of upset and like divide our attention, right? And we see this mostly really in comments, like comments on social media, like Facebook or Instagram or something like that. Now, what can be difficult is actually distinguishing, is this from a bot, a computer program, or is it from a real person? Because sometimes real people can also post very inflammatory things. And these bots, these fake programs, they can also, have these fake profiles that are made to look like real people. So they might take somebody's picture and make connections so that you may get a request, or you may see a comment posted by a fake profile, but that profile might have stolen a picture of somebody. And so it makes you think that it's a real person. and you therefore start interacting with it. So it can actually be quite difficult to know if it is or not. I would say a good rule of thumb is just if the comment or the content is very inflammatory or it's completely slanted one way or the other, you can kind of tell if something is meant to rile people up. Then whether it's from a bot or an actual person, it's probably just not worth interacting with because it's going to keep your attention and keep you from maybe focusing on something else. And we've had many examples of this politically where other countries have made these programs to make people in the United States argue about certain things, and it kind of just messes with all of that. And you can search it on the internet and actually find a lot of examples about it.
Now, you created Fun Fact Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about that. How can we participate as an individual member?
Sure. So Fun Fact Friday actually started with Celeste Tyrell. When we were brainstorming things we could try on the social media platform for GAPNA, she talked about some of the efforts she had tried with other nursing or healthcare organizations, and we kind of developed this Fun Fact Friday idea. I gathered just various facts pertaining to geriatrics or gerontological nursing or older adults using sources like Medicare or maybe like the Alzheimer's Association, just little snippets basically that Celeste would then kind of put into a lovely graphic as she does, and then she schedules the posts. And so it's really meant, again, just to be a quick snippet because social media is also, fast moving and people are scrolling on their phones. So if you're scrolling by something and it's got a whole lot of text, you're probably not going to stop. But if you have a short snippet, especially with a graphic or a photo or something like that, people are more likely to take a quick glance at it. And so we just thought we'd try that for the year and see what kind of posts get attention. And we were looking at things like, if it's Facebook, for example, how many likes or comments or shares? Or if it's, on Instagram, how many little hearts get clicked on it or how many comments, things like that. And so that was just something we tried to kind of put out onto social media just to try something new. There was no real end game. It was just something to try. I mean, I think that's a great thing about social media is that there's all things you can try, all different kinds of posts. For example, posts about Nurse Practitioner Week are always hugely popular. People love to share that. And I know that something else the national organization did was it gathered, quotes from real members about why they love being nurse practitioners. And those were really, really popular. They really hit a chord. So it was just something that we tried really for fun to kind of see how it went. It's not something that you have to keep doing. It could evolve or we could do something totally different. But it was also just to be an example of, hey, like we can try stuff. If people have ideas, bring the ideas to the table, and we're very open about it.
That's wonderful. We will provide some information about how to join the communication committee if you're interested, but also if you have a Twitter account, an Instagram account, how to follow our GAPNA. And please, if you could like and retweet or resend any of the items. I know that you have one particular quote that was very important when we look at this polarizing time that we have. We have a responsibility as an organization to really hold a high standard about these lines of misinformation, both as professionals that ground our practice in evidence-based. Maybe you could share this quote with us about these ideologies about health. Maybe you got out of nursing school. Health was not a political discussion. Now it's so different. Just share your reflections on this quote and how we can apply that.
Sure. Well, I'll read the quote briefly. It's a Werner von Braun quote, and it says, "Science does not have a moral dimension. It is like a knife. If you give it to a surgeon or a murderer, each will use it differently. The same could be said for applications of technology. The dilemma of finding and maximizing technology's benefits while minimizing its harm is especially important today, but it has plagued society for centuries. Today, we worry about junk on the internet. Yesterday, we worried about junk on TV. And before that, junk on the radio and film and books and newspapers." I really do. That's a great quote. I love that quote. It just really succinctly summarizes kind of what we as people, as a society, battle. I think that the internet and social media can be a great outlet because you can disseminate information quickly. You don't have to put it in the mail. You don't necessarily have to wait for your journal to get mailed to you. You can have instant 1-second access to wonderful guidelines and updates and the newest things, right? All in the palm of your hand in this amazing phone or whatever device or iPad or tablet you're using. But at the same time, as this quote says, we also have to be careful, especially us as healthcare professionals, as GAPNA, as an organization, as leaders, as people who do have a responsibility as clinicians to be able to educate our patients, our communities, our patients' families, caregivers. We do have to be careful about what we're reading, but also what we're sending out. I mean, as an organization, GAPNA has very high standards, just kind of without going into too much detail. We are always reviewing what kind of content is there. And even for social media, there are checkpoints because we're not just putting out things that haven't been vetted or looked at. Because the danger of not being careful about checking your sources or being careful about what you're putting out is that, once you put it out there, it's out there. Once it's on the internet, it's always there. There's always going to be some type of trace for it, unless you're my husband, a security engineer who knows how to erase things, I guess. So if you put something out that's wrong or is containing information that's maybe misinformation or something like that, it's already out there, and that can be very damaging to an organization or to a person or to a group or anything like that. So it's wonderful that we can get information out there. We just want to make sure we're getting credible, correct, helpful information.
And that's important as we care for our patients to have a strong foundation in science. So that's good advice for us.
Yep. They're reading it anyway.
Yes.
They're reading all that stuff. So we need to know how to respond to that stuff too.
Exactly. Do you have any parting words or anything you would like to share with us?
I would just say, if you are listening to this podcast, you are listening to something that has come from a long time of culminating work. And I'm so pleased that it's happening. And I'm so grateful to you, Sandy, for kind of spearheading this. But if you're listening and either you're new or you're kind of a newer member, or maybe you haven't joined yet, or even if you're a seasoned member and you want to know what else you can do, hey, hit us up. I mean, there are so many opportunities to get involved. For me personally, GAPNA has helped me grow so much. It still does as a professional, but even as a person. And the mentorships and the friendships and really the professional relationships that I've kind of been very fortunate to build over the last 10 years, I know that they're all going to be there for my entire career. It's not only a lifeline, it's a community of people. I call people my GAPNA family because I really feel like it's my GAPNA family. Like, you might be halfway across the country, but when I talk to you, monthly on a committee call, it's like we're all right here. And it's just really wonderful, especially in today's time where people are getting worn out, people are burned out. Organizations like GAPNA are what keep me going and remind me of why I got into nursing and why I do it in the first place. And I'm always very energized and rejuvenated after I've met with my GAPNA colleagues.
That is wonderful. Thank you so much. And we had Dr. Brette Svensson as our GAPNA Chat featured speaker tonight. And if you are interested in learning more about Dr. Svensson, she has been featured as a rising star in GAPNA, and she is in the GAPNA November 2021 newsletter. So you can read more about her and her feline family friends. Thanks again, Brette, and until next time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And it was such a pleasure.
GAPNA Chat is owned and produced by the Gerontological Advanced Practice Nurses Association. All rights reserved. No portion of this podcast may be used without written permission. Dr. Brette Svensson is a Post-Acute Services Medical Director with Wellstar Health System in Marietta, Georgia. She is the chair of the GAPNA Communications and Awards Committees, as well as the GAPNA Georgia Chapter Conference Planning Committee. Recently, Dr. Svensson was featured in the winter 2021 issue of the GAPNA Newsletter as a rising star within GAPNA. Dr. Cassandra Vonnes is the Nurses Improving Care for Health System Elders Coordinator, Geriatric Oncology at the Moffitt Center in Tampa, Florida. She is a member of the Gerontological Advanced Practice Nurses Association Communication Team and is a host of the GAPNA Chat podcast series. For archived episodes of GAPNA Chat, To learn more about the Gerontological Advanced Practice Nurses Association and to find and follow GAPNA on all of its social media sites, visit gapna.org. You can also subscribe to GAPNA Chat on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, our hosting site Spreaker, and everywhere podcasts are found.